Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this monthly in-depth ag forecast for AgSouth and Ag Carolina. All right, here's the layout of the video today. After we talk a bit about where August has taken us, and we're going to look at the short-term forecast, talk about the hurricane season, I'm going to blow this out into a longer-term forecast for both North America and South America. And we want to discuss what we see for our fall and winter based on some current information we have, especially about La Niña and what that might mean for the growing season that's about to start in the Southern Hemisphere. So here you go. This is the August part. In review, this August has been quite dry for much of the country. You can see that while we have had better convection daily thunderstorms earlier in August here, and don't forget we had major flooding in early August here, overall the stats show very dry for most of the country. And there's big questions. Are we going to see another really dry fall, save any would-be landfalling hurricane, across the eastern two-thirds of the United States? Just a couple of other things to point out. We've had a very lackluster southwest monsoon, literally until the last 3 or 4 days. And I'm not sure if you saw it in the news, but there was a huge, what we call haboob, big dust storm created by the outflow of a thunderstorm that hit Phoenix. But overall, we look at this time frame and go, man, that was pretty dry. I want to look at it another way, though. Let's look at the new drought monitor. You have the drought monitor on the left. You have the change map that's on the right, plus some comments I have about this. We've seen drought expanding in the Mid-South and the Delta. Now, over AgSouth, Ag Carolina territory, very little drought showing up right now, despite some of the drier weather we have seen recently in pockets of the southeastern United States. But I want to make a point that we have pretty good evidence that we're going to continue to watch drought build into this area unless something big comes along to change it. So I'm going to come back to that in just a few minutes. But one other thing to look at, let's go back 2 months, the last 60 days. So now we can start to see the extremely heavy rainfall. When you go back that far, that created all that flooding we saw way back in early August. And it's showing up in the longer-term statistics. You can see where drought has been building in these regions. And, of course, you've probably seen some of the crop tour results or the USDA's estimates of the size of the corn and soybean crops. We've just had a lot of persistent thunderstorms here. And it's been influential in the size and quality of this particular crop. Now, just my own 2 cents into this, I think we're going to see that number back off as we go forward in time. Is it still a record crop for corn and soybeans here? Yes, but I think you're going to see the number probably back off as we see the way the season finishes and also take a look at what some of the heat stress look like during this season. Speaking of that heat stress, I thought you might like to see this. Since the solstice, which was on June 20th, up until the 27th of August, where it's been hottest in the country has kind of been here in east, especially in Florida, and then in the southwest. California's actually had a cool summer. There's been cooler air at times that's made it through here. In fact, the day I'm recording this, it's pretty darn cold across much of the eastern half of the country. But for us, it's been a very, very hot summer. And we have been dealing with repeated episodes of heat. We're not in one now, but we were in them multiple times, especially in the months of June, July, and early August. I want to show you a neat map. I was curious how the heat could have been affecting some things. And so I made a map that shows when you look at the number of nights so far in 2025, where the minimum temperature has been 71 degrees Fahrenheit or hotter. How did that compare to the average from 1981 to 2024? And what you find is that throughout much of AgSouth territory, we're sitting between about 15 and 25 additional nights where the overnight low was well above 70 or 71. And the farther you get down here into southern Georgia, the number gets bigger. Now, there's a problem with that. That just means we had no relief from the heat. The humidity was so high this year, and it's really actually affecting a lot of the eastern Corn Belt with the quality of the crop there. But make no doubt about it, we've lately seen a complete shift of this as we get into this last 10 days so of August, where the temperatures have they've cascaded over the top of a large ridge in the west and just set up what has been an absolutely pleasant end of the month. Now, we got questions about this. Like, how does it finish August? What does this mean as we go later? What is this doing to the hurricane season? All of these questions we've got to get in and address. So let's start off with what changed. Since about the 10th of August, what had been a dominant feature all of summer, which was the presence of higher than average pressure in this area, the strength of the Bermuda High was just incredible this year. it's been just blasted out. It's now moved up here to, the North Atlantic, over toward Great Britain, Ireland, Iceland, or we have a piece of high pressure here as well. We saw Hurricane Erin come through, but the reason why Erin made the turn, a big reason for that, was we had a trough of low pressure dive in here, and the Bermuda High was sliding. So Erin just went around. And that's what some of the lower pressure that you can see in this area it means. Now, why is this so critical for our forecast? Well, if the Bermuda High was in Bermuda, we'd be talking about pump of moisture coming out of the Atlantic or from the Caribbean into the Gulf and just keeping this whole area hot and stormy as we go forward. But instead, the Bermuda High today, as I'm recording this, is way over here. It's way over more toward the Azores than anything. And I want to know, how long does it stay there, and what might that mean for us as we go forward, especially in the hurricane season? We got to get in there and talk about that. Because right now, all we're watching is Ferdinand, and Ferdinand is way out to open ocean. The National Hurricane Center doesn't see anything as we finish the month of August, and even the very beginning, the first few days of September. There's nothing really here to be forecast that's going to come through. So we need to step back and just say, well, should the second half of this season be busy? And I'm going to relate this multiple times in this video, but I think it will be. And I think it's going to be impactful to us in the Southeast in the second half of the season. And I'll make a case for why I think that's going to be. So first of all, we are experiencing another La Nina. 4 out of the last 5 falls have had La Ninas. Now you're going, well, tell me what it did. What did it do in those other 4 La Ninas? I can't, because your precipitation patterns in fall are often very, very much largely skewed by hurricanes. So we can't do it. But I can tell you for the rest of the country, they were dry falls every time we had a La Nina. We've got one now. It's still very warm in the Caribbean, very warm in the Gulf. And all you're seeing through here is Erin's cold water trail. This will, of course, go back closer to normal as just a little bit more time passes. Now, thinking that through, I want to show you why the tropics are so uneventful right now. The best rising motion in the world is happening over by Indonesia and the Philippines, maybe actually back over toward India. I should have included that in my hatching as well. And because of that, we're looking at more tropical development in the West Pacific than anywhere else, and actually some in the East Pacific too. But this you need to think of as a big suppressing lid on the upper atmosphere, and that's one of the reasons why we're not seeing too much going on. One other thing to point out, starting early next week, some states in Brazil will be able to plant soybeans. They got permission to go on the first, one of them being Paraná. And right now, I don't think the monsoon's going to kick up very early. I'll come back to that in just a few minutes. But because of this big suppressing lid, I look across the Atlantic right now, and I don't see any African easterly waves going. In fact, anything that could get into the Caribbean would just be sheared apart by these stronger winds. We've got a big area of high pressure sitting over the top of us and much cooler air. So yeah, it's kind of back off, right now in terms of the tropical season. It'll get going again soon, but I'm going to give you a timeline on that here in just a few minutes. Short story is, I think it's going to be the second half of the season, starting on September 15th, probably, that we get a bit more activity going more routinely as we finish out this season. So you've been watching this animation, and I want to talk to you about this high pressure here, because on radar, whenever you see just big time convection going throughout the western states, that tells me the monsoonal circulation is going. And a lot of times, whenever we see this, all the heat is west, and a big trough of cold air and dry air has just run itself all the way down to the Gulf Coast or to the southeast coast. And that's exactly what's going on. So while there are flood watches out west because of the monsoonal moisture, we're dealing with actually some cooler weather farther to the south and east. Now, I'll come back to the cooler weather in a second. I at least want to show you that our chances of rain are not zero. First of all, it's the southeast in summer. Daily convection can happen without warning. You know this, okay? But in terms of more organized systems, starting here on Wednesday and playing through the evening hours, getting into Thursday, you got a front that's sneaking through here, low pressure that's trying to form off the coast, which means the coastal regions will likely see scattered showers and storms. And then we're keeping an eye on this feature going through Arkansas, over the Delta, working its way toward us as we get toward Friday and eventually into Saturday. And I think there's a chance that we start to see more scattered precipitation coming in as we work our way toward the weekend, but it's not an overwhelming amount of rainfall, okay? Just make sure to keep that clear. But I do want to come back to this. I mean, if you look right now at the satellite, I'll kind of rock back and forth here in the day here on the 27th. Big time convection in the west. That is the cold front that has swept through, that has brought in such nice weather overall. All right. Now, I want to know, how long are we going to stick around with this cooler weather? And I think some of the answer to that lies in what's going on right now in the Bering Sea, which is here. There's a trough of low pressure. There's also one that's sitting right here. And the question begins to come up, will we see something like this happening again in another 15 to 20 days? In other words, right around the midpoint of the hurricane season in mid-September. There's a rule out there called the Bering Sea Rule, and under certain regimes it applies. And what it means is whatever you see in the Bering Sea, plan on it being in the eastern United States in about 17, 18 days. So I'm just going to apply it. Why not? Let's have a look at it and see what that means overall to our upper level pattern and maybe the temperatures. Because right now, the big thing that's happening in the North Pacific is there's the trough. Now, I know it's on this side, but it's also over here. That's what I'm talking about. And we see everything blocked up with what's called a Rex block, or a high over low. So what's happening here is the jet stream's coming around, going over the top, back like this, and then diving. And every time we see a pattern like this taking shape, it tends to stick around, hence the phrase block, and it tends to go on repeat. So what I want to know is, did the event that happened 15, 17 days ago here, which is now there, is that going to happen again? Get the trough out of the Bering Sea back into the southeast. So let me show you what it's doing currently. This is the jet stream pattern right now. So there's our current trough. There's the big ridge that's to the west. As we go forward, all right, we still just see more troughing here all the way to next Tuesday and Wednesday, and it's even reinforced by next Thursday. And what I want to know is, do we start to see, this is now September 6th, we're already in that first full week of September, do we start to see something shifting that was once here that's going to re-show up back here? Now, the model attempts to wash it out. It always does. But I'll tell you what I don't see. I don't see a huge ridge building in here right now, according to this weather forecast. So the temperatures respond in kind. Here's today's Wednesday's highs, Thursday, Friday. Look at this, 80s, low 80s every day. Getting into Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I mean, in fact, you get back here toward the higher elevation, toward the Appalachian Mountains, and you're talking upper 70s. So that's a whole additional week of cooler weather. And as you look out there a bit farther, take a look. That's your next 5 days compared to average. That's day 5 through 10. See what I mean by a blocked pattern? Here's day 10 through 15. And my speculation is we might see this go all the way past the middle of the month based on what's happening in the Bering Sea today. I've got other supporting evidence for it too. In other words, what I'm trying to tell you is I think you're going to be cool for a while. Or at least normal to cool, not blazing hot. But here's the other piece of evidence. The MJO, we track it through phases 1 all the way to 8. Starts off in Africa, goes across the Indian Ocean, goes into Indonesia, and then out into the Pacific. And it's currently here in phase 4, and it's expected to sweep back over to phase 8, 1, and 2. Some models are very aggressive at sweeping it sooner to get back over into phase 8, 1, and 2. And you're saying, well, what does that mean? Well, if we get this back over here by mid-September, historical correlations say this. There's troughing of low pressure here. Guess what? That's cool. All the heat is back in this area or out in the North Atlantic. And even a model that's run based off a regression looking historically and using it to construct these historical, what we call analogs. In other words, when this has happened in the past, guess what it did? Bering Sea trough, eastern U.S. trough, western ridge. So I just think there's some staying power in this. And I'm making this point because normally at this point in the forecast video, I'm like, hey, let's go look at the models. And the models are terrible. They've been terrible all summer. And the current forecast out there for that second half of September is hot. And I don't think it's going to be the case. I think we're going to see the rule of thumb I just mentioned to you, plus the evidence I showed you with the MJO. I think it's going to outdo this particular model run's forecast of above average temperatures for most of North America. All right. Now, we haven't even talked about precipitation other than the very quick little, updated it for the next couple of days. But I have rain returning over the next 15 days. Let me show you when. Let's take you back till now. And as I play this forward, actually, let's reset that real quick. There we go. As I take you through this, what we're going to be paying attention to is where the rain is going to be coming from. We're trying to assess that. So playing it forward, there's our chances of rain moving in by Friday. See it? Not much, but it's trying to get in there. We could see scattered coastal storms as well. Don't forget that. We noticed that into Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, rainfall chances into Georgia are much higher than they are in North and South Carolina. Okay, much, much higher. And then playing it through the early next week time frame, we start to fill things in. There's another front that sweeps through, such that by the time I work you out there to 10 days, well, look, we've got pretty widespread chances of grabbing another inch or so, knowing that this corridor right in through here has the highest probability of being quite wet. Maybe some places picking up three or 4 inches of rain out of this on the whole. Now, overall, though, take a look at where it's dry. So much of the Midwest getting over into the, this part of the Ohio Valley, the Eastern Great Lakes Basin, and then into the Northeast. That's an important factor. So is the dryness in the Canadian Prairie. But overall, if we just kind of look at the timing of things, here comes the rain. You can pick either model you want. This is the GFS on the left, European on the right. Here comes the rain Friday sliding into Georgia. We then watch. I like to pay more attention to the European, by the way. This is that wetter Saturday time frame I was telling you about. Tends to last a bit into Sunday. There you go. And then early next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. See the storms continuing to sit and spin in this area in the European. They're offshore in the GFS, but they're there in the European. We then see a front sweeping through. There it is, right there, by Thursday the 4th and 5th, and that could bring us another chance at some rain. So we're not dry, super dry now. We have chances of rain that are coming up. In fact, the probability of getting over 2 inches, look how high it is right in through this corridor here. And we're going to have better chances of an inch throughout the rest of the area that I just circled there. But I want to know, does that last? Do we continue to see that going forward? Because some of the models out there, when you purely look at the 4th of September through the 10th, are still drier for us. Not dry, but drier. And the other thing I see here, no indications of any big hurricanes showing up in the models just yet. So where does that leave us? Well, that leaves us asking questions about where September is going to go. And I'm going to start off first with a look at late summer, early fall temperatures. So I went to the whole region of the Southeast and I said, well, tell me this. Since 1980, what have the temperatures been doing? And hey, they've been warming since 1980. They've actually recovered back to where they were in like the early 1900s, getting up to the Dust Bowl era. They then cooled off in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they made a return coming back here. So you've been on a warming trend for a while. Now, what about precipitation? Let's flip this over now to precipitation. We'll click plot. And overall, during that time period, we're actually getting a little bit wetter in our falls as well. The trend from 1980 to present is slightly wetter. Now, I want to be clear here. Every fall in September and October, precipitation in the Southeast is volatile year to year. Huge changes. And that, of course, is because of the hurricane season. And I want to reiterate to you, this hurricane season is going to likely be back half weighted. Mid-September to November. Okay, November 1. And the evidence, again, La Niña and the warm ocean temperatures that are still here. Now, as I think this through, this La Niña is growing. And we can also see the cold water churned up by Hurricane Erin. And what I want to know is, well, what's the chances of that La Niña really dominating this late summer, early fall forecast? And it's about a 60% chance, according to NOAA. Now, what do you do with that? Well, one, you can look historically and say, well, when that typically happens, everywhere inside this outline I drew here typically has a slight drier risk. It's not dry, though. I mean, according to this kind of analysis, it's just the correlations are too weak. But we know we got to pay attention to it. So I can zoom in and show you something a little different. I went ahead and correlated the September, October, November precipitation with La Niña. And what we typically find, okay, is that if you're looking for wet falls, you want to have an El Nino, not a La Niña. That's what the warmer colors mean. Warmer colors mean that everywhere inside or to the south of that line I just drew are wetter when there's an El Nino. And what I just said is you're having a La Niña, which means models are likely going to be drier because of historical correlations. Now, what about temperatures? Let's flip over and see that. If we have an El Nino, we tend to be cooler in here. The correlations are not strong there. So we're not really going to be able to say much about the fall temperature pattern based off of La Niña, which is coming through. Okay, now you're going, wait, you just said El Nino. I know, because I'm trying to make sure the correlations make sense to you. So this is just a correlation with El Nino, La Niña, both of them, all right? So let's go from there and start taking a look at some forecasts. The September, October, November outlook put out by the government, the CPC, they are milder for us, warmer than average. They're very warm for the Intermountain West, southwest corner of the United States, Four Corners states. They are still calling for that active back half of the hurricane season as well. And this is also being influenced by the fact that I think more stationary boundaries might set up over this area late in the season, and that's why they've gone over wetter. But because every long-range model thinks that there's going to be a dominant La Nina for winter, they're all doing this. They're all taking this whole region and making it dry to the south of it, where the jet stream enters into the northwest here and exits through the Ohio Valley. And that's why they got you drier and warmer for winter of this year. And I'm just going to tell you, you need to just take this with a grain of salt the size of a basketball. I mean, we had a La Nina last winter. We've had them 4 out of the last 5 winters, and each one has had a different variety. So what else? What other evidence is there? Well, we can go out and have a look at the newest forecast that comes up from the National Multimodal Ensemble. And sure enough, guess what it's doing? It's like, hey, look, that corridor in there's drier. And then it says in winter, really dry. And I'm just going to tell you, even though that's the historical correlation, do this. Just know what it says now, but don't take it all in just yet. Do not take this and run with it, because winter is a highly volatile time period. And to even just make the blanket statement that it's going to fit into some mold of, forecasting metric is not going to happen. Okay. What I do want to make a case for again is that September to early November timeframe, we do need to be keeping an eye, especially on the homegrown systems as we go forward. Bermuda High will ultimately dictate where these things go. So I want to finish up, as I told you at the beginning, with a bit on South America. They're going to be able to plant here early next week, especially in Paraná, which is right there. And then on the 7th of September, they can plant here, and on the 14th, they can plant everywhere else. There is no early moisture here. There's better moisture in Argentina because of a cold front, but no early moisture. And as a result of that, there's not going to be this rapid planting. They've got to wait on the moisture to come up. The longer range forecasts are terrible, just terrible for South America. Like, look, this is the European model prediction, and this is the GFS extended prediction. I mean, they completely flip-flop on the biggest producing state, which is Mato Grosso. So I'm just going to tell you this. If they get in and they plant fast, that is not good for the United States and our agricultural exports, because the earlier they plant and the quicker the crop goes through its stages, the more spaced out their entire crop calendar is being. Don't forget, they don't grow 2 crops, they grow 3. If for some reason weather, either too dry or way too wet, delays them, then that compacts their cropping calendar, and that tends to have an impact where that the United States markets have to cover some of the global exports for a while. And it starts to put into jeopardy the quality of the crop, all of which we're going to be watching for the next several months. So I will talk to you again in late September, and between now and then, I want you to know, watch out for another shot of cooler air and be prepared for the tropical season to take that, second half and run with it. We'll talk soon. Thanks.